Well, for me personally, the things I find most disabling would be to do with hidden disability. So like people just don't realise and they assume you have what they see a 24-year-old having. So like mobility or energy or anything, they just are like, yeah, you're fine. It's like you say you're tired or you say you're having a really bad day for fatigue. And they're like, don't believe you almost. And that's, I think, probably the most disabling thing.
I have an invisible impairment, which means people can't see or it's not immediately obvious to them that I am disabled. And because of their preconceived notions, they're likely to not give me the accommodations that I want, or I'm forced to prove myself constantly. And this is particularly hard if I'm dealing with any sort of aspect of the state or council, because you are in the position of always trying to prove your impairment through the lens of the medical model and through a very limited idea of what disability is, and you may not always be able to have the exact right things that they want. So again, that makes it really hard.
There's a number of different barriers. The first one being a lack of seats when you're out in public. Like I live in Tubbercurry, and for me, just off the top of my head, on the main street, there are actually only 2 benches where you could actually sit down. And so if you're out, hanging out with friends or whatever, there's nowhere to sit. And then not everyone, particularly someone like myself, I can't stand all the time. That's one of the reasons why I use a chair. If you can see it, it's because I just can't do the standing. So for me to not be stressed when I'm out about always looking for a seat, if you're out anywhere, there's just no seats, and it's just, I'm always like, it's easier for me to be thinking of, I have my own chair, I don't have to think, compared to being always stressed about trying to find a seat.
On a day-to-day basis, things like going into town, for me it's not an obvious example of accessibility maybe to people, but public seating is really important. If you have an impairment like mine where you need to energy manage or rest or maybe sit or lie down, something like a bench can make a huge difference. And often find it's not, my impairment is not the thing stopping me from doing it. It's not having simple things like an adequate space to exist in. Because if you can't sit in the space, you're not going to stay in the space.